some of the features of GrassSnap is that it's actually going to photo stamp all of your pictures. So if you pull it up on your computer, or if you go to print it, it's going to have your pasture name, the date you took that picture, the GPS location, and then which direction you were looking. It's also going to store all of your pictures and data in folders under the Albums button, and then all this information can easily be transferred and downloaded to your computer, where you can either print it off or look at it on a bigger screen. That's something we really want you guys to do, is to get it on a bigger screen, not just have it on your smartphone, because you can't quite see the detail in there. The GPS coordinates, if you have cell service, GrassSnap will automatically take those GPS coordinates down and put them on your picture. If you live where I live in the middle of the sandhills and you don't have cell service, it will ask you for your GPS coordinates. And so you guys can manually put those in, and then it's much easier when you go back the next year to find those pastures. We also worked with the Nebraska Grazing Lands Coalition on GrassSnap and the NRCS, because Nebraska has a CSP program, and they have a monitoring enhancement PLT02, and so GrassSnap will cover all the information that you need for that program as well. So some resources, we have a website for GrassSnap, and it's centralsandhills.unl.edu/GrassSnap, and so I'm updating that all the time. I have a user manual on there for the Apple version. There's some videos you can watch on how to set up monitoring. There's videos to watch on how to actually run GrassSnap. So I'm updating that every day when we get new information. So that would be a good place to look and see if GrassSnap has been released yet. The other resource that we have available is a NEB guide that Tussler, Jenkins, Valesky, and I wrote to supplement GrassSnap, and it just helps you set up monitoring and decide what you need in your monitoring system. So you can Google that. It's G2212. One thing I wanted to point out is when I first started working on this app, I couldn't even turn on my iPad, and so everybody said that even a 2-year-old can do it. So you can see by my screen that I took their advice and downloaded apps for my 2-year-old, and they were right. It actually, they can use it, and that's part of the way that I actually learned how to use my iPad. So I'm not technologically savvy, and so we tried to make this program so if you're not comfortable using the computer, that it's still easy enough for you to go through the steps and gather that information. So I'm going to try to switch over to GrassSnap and see if we can do this using the app. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see my iPad screen now. And so I'm just going to take you through some of the aspects of GrassSnap. And first thing you're going to do is download it to your smart device and then just open it up. And you can see here that I have 4 buttons. And the first one that we're going to talk about is the Albums button. And this is just where all of your pictures and data is going to be stored. So when you first get the app, of course, this is going to be blank. But you can go in here and you can see I practiced on my husband and had him do some of these for me. And you can see if we want to pick a pasture, we just touch a folder, and then it will bring up our pictures, and we can get a little bit bigger version of that picture. And you can see all of our pastures. We used the NRCS map, so they were all our pastures. So R31 was the pasture that we can see here. And it gives our GPS coordinates and our date, and then which direction we were looking. And the GPS coordinates, once you put that in initially, you don't have to put it in again. So that's one nice feature about the app as well. And then we did trend score, and we just put, you can put comments on there as well, when you were in there, how many head, and it's just a nice place to store your information. You can also put your precipitation records in here, so it's all in one place. So usually when we go out and look at a pasture, we try to find a representative area. The other thing you can do as well is maybe have a problem area, and that's what we did on this one, is there's a blowout that we're trying to get healed up, and so we took a picture of that just to see if we can get that to where it's not blowing anymore and gets healed over. So you can either do problem areas or do the more average areas in your pasture. So if we go back to the main menu, the next button that we have is the maps, and this will actually bring up a Google map, and you can make it bigger and actually see the locations that you've been in. And you can see here in Thedford, there's a test that I did one day, and so if you touch the button, it'll actually tell you what that pasture name is. Probably the more useful part of the map button is at the top. You can see there's a list view, and so it has all of my pastures in here along with their GPS coordinates. So I can print this off, or I can just take this with me in the next pasture that I go into. If I have a GPS unit, I can type those units in, but you need to realize that GrassSnap runs off of decimal degrees when you do GPS, and so I actually had to call the Garmin help desk and have them help me go through the settings so I could get from degrees, minutes, seconds to that decimal degree. So make sure that you're on the right unit when you use that. So all of these are in decimal degrees. So you can see I could print those off. I can also email them. KML actually works on Google Earth, and so you could export it that way if you want to. Or you can save the coordinates to your camera roll, and then it makes it into a picture, and you can get the information off that way too. But it's real helpful for the next time you go out to monitor your pastures. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is add a new Transect. So this is going to be the first button that you choose when you go to monitor a pasture. So today we're just going to call this the webinar pasture, and I have a virtual pasture in my office today, so we'll see if this works. My phone cord's long enough. So we're just going to put in our name, and I do have wireless in here, so it's going to record my GPS coordinates. Otherwise, I'd type them in right after this. So it's going to tell me, take a photo point looking out. And it has my location on there. And I'm just going to hit the white circle to take a picture. And you can see it's going to put my pasture name on there, the date, my coordinates, and then which direction I was looking. And so you can either keep it or retake it. So we're going to keep this one. And then it tells you to take a photo plot looking down. So I have my hoop here, and so I'm just going to go ahead and take a picture, keep, and then I can add up to 5 plots. So if I want to, I can step or measure out and get a little bit better idea of what my pasture is actually looking like. So I can look down and take another picture, and ideally you want that hoop to fill up that entire frame on your picture. So I could keep adding plots. If I just want to do 1 or 2, I can just hit done, but you can add up to 5 on there. So the next step that GrassSnap allows you to do is to do a grazing index. So for Lynn Myers, we use Sandris on his place. It's a Nebraska grazing index for the sandhills. There's also one for western Nebraska for native cool season. And so you can go in here and put in your data. Since I'm in the sandhills, we'll use Sandris. And if you're not sure what the rating system is, you can touch that blue eye, and it will bring up more information about that. And so you can kind of decide how you want to rank those. So we can just go ahead and put in here our scores, and you can see it's going to add them up at the bottom. And even if you're not in Nebraska, you can go ahead and use the comment box. And so you could put in here that you had 100 pairs from, we'll just say, April 1st to May 15th. And one thing you want to make sure when you're typing in comments, the autocorrect will change things. And so you can also put in here, what your precip is. So maybe we have 10 inches to date. And so then you can say, okay, I'm done. And then if you want to check your screen, you can double check and make sure that you have everything that you need on there. We didn't get our 10 inches in, so I'm going to go ahead and go back and fix that. But it's kind of your last chance to fix your information, because once it's entered in here, you can't go back. Okay, so we're going to say done for that. And then for CSP, the NRCS program, you have the option to do an apparent trend score. So if you're using this for CSP, you can pick your ecological site. We're going to be a SANS. Your reference plant community, this is going to be different for every pasture that you have. So for me, it's going to be, we'll say it's switchgrass. And then what's our precip looking like this year? We'll say we're normal. And then we can just pick out what our scores are on this. And again, if you're not sure about the ranking system, you can go ahead and pull up more information on that. And again, if you want to put comments in here, so if you're not in Nebraska and you don't want to use an apparent trend score, again, utilize that comment section. So you can put whatever you want to in the comments, and it will save that information with your data. So we can say we had a late frost. And so that's going to keep all my data with it. So go ahead and hit done. And then we can return to the main menu. And so we can go into our albums, and we should be able to scroll down and find our webinar. And then you can see all my pictures there. And so you can blow up to see your grazing and trend scores. And, like I said, even if you just want to leave the grazing index as blank and you utilize that comment section, it'll keep all that information together. So the pictures and the data are all going to stay together on that. And if you like, you can go ahead and export this data. So if you don't have iTunes for some reason, or your internet's not working, you might be able to save it to your camera roll and then go back and download that to your computer. The other thing you can do with this edit button is clear photos from this Transect. So if I'm doing, 45, 50 pastures, I'm going to start running out of room on my smart device. And so it will clear the photos out of that folder, but you'll still keep your original photo point and your GPS coordinates. The only time you ever want to delete albums is if you're never going to go in that pasture again. So I have a lot of tests on here. I could go ahead and delete those because they don't really have any meaning. Or if I'm renting some ground and it gets sold and I'm no longer able to graze that or do monitoring on it, then you can go ahead and delete it. But don't use that delete button unless you're absolutely sure that you're not going to go back in there. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to show you guys is the update existing. So once you have your information in there, you can go ahead and choose update existing. And there's a list of our pastures in there. So if I choose the webinar pasture, that was our example for today, and then I turn on the overlay, you can see how it brings up the original photo point that I took. And some of the monitoring that we did for Lynn, I wasn't a very good photographer. Sometimes I had, half sky, half grass, and so this makes it so you can actually line up those hills. It'd be better if we didn't have a pickup in there, but see how I can actually line up the silhouette of those hills and get pretty darn close to where I was last year. And so that should help you get very consistent and repeatable pictures. And so that's a feature of the overlay that will hopefully help you guys out when you go out to do your photo monitoring. And then when you go through the update existing, it's exactly the same as add a new transect. All the steps are except for the overlay button. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of here.